Greetings and welcome to another edition of Client Conversations. I'm Anthony Griffin, and today I'm here with Amélie Geeraert. How are you doing, Amélie?
Hi, Anthony. Nice to see you. I'm doing well.
Good. All right. Well, Amélie, why don't you tell us about your company, Kokoro Media, and your role at Kokoro Media?
Yes, so I'm chief editor at Kokoro Media, which is a website that focuses on Japanese culture, but seen from a more human point of view, if I may say. So one of our main contents is interviews of people who are either Japanese people or foreign residents in Japan. And usually these are diverse people who have like diverse ages, genders, professions or passions, and they all have a very distinct point of view on what Japan is or Japanese culture. And through these people's eyes, you can discover maybe a Japan that you've not heard about before. And in addition to that, we will also have culture articles about more traditional aspects of Japan or Japanese language, and also many articles that may help you live in Japan, find a job in Japan, more practical things about daily life in Japan.
Right, excellent. And just for those who might not know, so I've been working with Kokoro Media as an author and a consultant since about 2018. So these days, that's about right, 2018?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, it's been a while, and these days I produce about 3 or 4 articles a month. So please be on the lookout for Amélie's articles, my articles, as well, and occasional guest articles as well. So with that said, let's jump into today's topic, and we're going to discuss how to ask compelling questions, whether you're interviewing someone like we do, or maybe you just want to get to know your clients better or get to know someone better. So with that, Amélie, my first question is, in general, when you're doing one of these Kokoro Media interviews, how do you get someone to open up and give you interesting information for your content?
Yes, so I've been doing interviews for quite a while now, so there are a few tips that I can share. And what I've realized along all this process of interviewing very different people is that usually people like to talk about themselves. They do like to talk about what they do and what they like. But of course, sometimes you will find some people that are a little bit more shy, who do not want to sound like they're boasting. So for this kind of people, usually it's good to ask them about what they really like or what their motivation is in life. So instead of focusing on the person themselves, you focus on something that looks exterior to them, so they will be more comfortable to talk. So that's one tip for when you have to deal with more introverted, shy people.
Okay.
Which is a tip I gather from my own experience, being an introvert myself.
Same here.
I realize that when I talk with other people, I tend to talk more when they ask me about what I like and my passions and stuff like that. So observing myself helped me interviewing some less talkative people, if I may say. Yes. On the opposite, you may find people who like to talk about themselves so much that it's difficult to stop them. So it's one thing also, well, you get that through experience, but it's also very important to be able to pace the person and to not hesitate sometimes to stop them, to ask them something else. But that may be a little bit difficult when you don't have experience. And regarding questions themselves, the most important thing, I think, is to be precise in your questions. To give you an idea, if you live in Japan, for example, you probably have heard this question when you go back home to your home country. People are going to ask you, so what is it like to live in Japan? And I don't know, have you heard this question before, Anthony?
Absolutely. That and say something in Japanese.
Yes,
Just
right.
anything.
The
Yeah.
two classic ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to answer these questions because you're like, okay, where do I start? There are so many things I could say. Or I could just say, yeah, it's cool. So it's a very bad, that's an example of a very bad kind of question. But instead, if the people who want to know more about Japan had asked you, let's say, for example, how are your working conditions in Japan, or how do you like the food there, or how did you make friends in Japan, more precise things that will tell about your life, then you can start to get a story from this person. So be precise. That's the very first, most important thing. And also, do not hesitate to ask questions that you personally find interesting, because chances are, if something intrigues you about this person, then most probably the readers will find it interesting too. Not always, but most of the time, I guess. And then a good way to get a person to unfold a story about themselves is to ask questions about change. For example, if you're asking someone about their business, you may ask them what has led you to start your own company. Or you can ask, if you're interviewing a painter, you may ask them, how did your painting process change along the years? Or was there a major turning point in your life? So talking about change usually is a good way to tell a story, because the person will have to tell more about them. And another good way to make the story more interesting through questions is to ask them about feelings. Well, that's something I evoked a little bit earlier. But for example, if you're interviewing a sake brewer, if you just ask, okay, cool, so could you please tell me what sake is? It's not so interesting. But if instead you ask them, so what do you think is appealing about sake? Or why do you personally like sake? Then they will, of course, put their own feelings into the answer, and you may get some more interesting answers. And also another good way to get useful and interesting information is to ask people about the hard times they had. So when they tell the story, you can guess what must have been hard for them, and you can ask them directly. So you did this and that, but wasn't it too hard? What were your difficulties in the process? And usually people, they like to complain a little bit. So they will tell you the difficulties that they had. And also it's good because you're going to use your empathy and show them that you understand them, so they may be more inclined to tell you the story, because you look like someone that's really listening to them, and they may trust you.
Okay. Wow. So you actually pretty much answered my next question, but I want to give you another chance to mention anything
Sure.
that you might have left out. So my next question was about, what specific questions should we ask? So is there anything else you'd like to add, or do you have a favorite question that you like to ask in your interviews?
Yes. So based on what I just explained, there are 2 or 3 questions that I tend to ask a lot. So for example, so there is the famous, what has led you to do this and that? So that's a good question to start. And also I like to ask people how they got their ideas. So how did you get the idea to do your own company, or this new concept, or whatever? Because usually an idea doesn't really pop like this in your head. That's the feeling you usually get when you get an idea. But usually there's a whole process. And when the interviewee answer that, they usually know about it. They're going to say, well, I was doing this thing and that thing, and I realized there was this problem, and I tried to solve it, and then I got that idea because I want to do this. And then you get all the information just with this simple question. You got their past, you got the problems they have, or maybe the problems they realize society had, and you get their motivation and what they want to do later. So with a simple question, you get a whole story. So that's a very useful one. And also, I like to ask people about their hardest moments and also their happiest moments when they did their project, because, well, that it usually this question has a good potential for moving stories.
Yeah.
So, and it's very human, because most of the time when you ask them their happiest moments, it usually involves other people, and we can all relate to this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a quick follow-up question. So you mentioned you learned a lot of this just based on your own experience or reflecting on yourself. Are there any other resources or things that you learned to pick up these excellent tips?
Yeah, well, I do read a lot of interviews myself. So that's also a good thing, to read what other questions people are asking. And I'm trying to not stick just to one type of interviews, but read interviews of different people, like artists and things like that. It can give you a good idea of what a useful question maybe.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Well, let's wrap up today with one more question. So
Sure.
when we were talking about the concept for today, you mentioned to me that these tips are not only good for interviewing, but they could also be great for customer service. So would you mind explaining that?
Sure. Well, I think getting to know someone is a good skill to have anyway. So knowing how to ask good questions is good to know your customer better. So that's why it can help you with customer service. And I think, and you may agree with me on that, is that customers, they usually know what they want, but they may not know what they really need,
Yes.
because what they want is only based on what they already know. But you may know some things like some service or some advice that you could give them, and they, of course, they don't know about it, because that's why you're there. So talking to them and getting to know their story more will help you find out like tailor-made solutions for your customer.
Mhm.
And of course, if you get to know their vision, their motivation, and their difficulties, well, then you can provide better service to them. And also asking precise questions, as I said earlier, it will make you sound more professional, I think. And also, your customer will feel that you're really interested in them and you're really listening to them. And of course, I think this is a good base to build a good relationship with your customers and have them trust you when you propose solutions. So yes, it's asking the right questions. It's like a part of the hearing skills that are useful for service in general, I think.
Okay. Well said. That sounds like something that would be also great for networking, when you go to
Yeah.
an event and instead of just saying, what do you do? Maybe asking, more or asking deeper questions like the ones that you mentioned where you can get a
Yeah,
story or something
definitely.
like that. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will wrap up and thank you so much. But before we go, even though a lot of the people watching this probably already know where to find more out about you and Kokoro Media, would you like to share the best way to follow our content or to get in touch?
Yes, so of course you can visit our website. You just type Kokoro Media on any research website that you like. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So feel free to follow us on your favorite social media. And we also have a newsletter that is published once per month. So if you do not have a lot of time to visit our website frequently, you can get our best articles in your mailbox once per month. And we do not send spam, so please do not worry.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you are busy, so I appreciate it. And I will talk to you very soon once again. So thank you so much, Amélie, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.